All right, good evening, Facebook. Today I'm going to talk about some recent events that have happened to primarily Liberal candidates and party members. But it's just a short 24-hour example of a wider problem that faces those of us who are on the right of the political spectrum. And if you don't really know if you're right or left, there's a few ways to find out. There's plenty of political tests that you can take online that will help you figure that out. But if you're on the right of the political spectrum at the moment, you in some cases, some commentators are even in physical danger from the left. I have mentioned before, and I'll continue to do so, that I think the Greens Party and groups like Antifa, which have links to those sorts of extreme leftists like the Greens, are a physical, clear and present danger to our way of life in Australia, but also in the greater Western society that we enjoy. So in the last, probably more like 36 hours now, but the last day and a half, we've had a Prime Minister physically attacked with an egg, which didn't actually break on his head. That resulted in an older lady being knocked to the ground as the security around Scott Morrison correctly reacted to the person who threw the egg, which was a young Greens supporter. We've had an ex-Prime Minister, Liberal Prime Minister, has been sent dog feces in the mail. A bomb threat has been sent through to Scott Morrison's church. That was yesterday as well. Even in the last week, we've had things like, I think it was Peter Hasty in West Australia, someone tried to set his campaign bus on fire. We've had a number of signs and things like that for the Liberal Party or those on the right that have been defaced and destroyed. And the truth of the matter is, the Greens, the left, don't believe that we on the other side of the spectrum have even a right to exist almost. But we certainly in their mind don't have a right to express ourselves. We do not have a right to have a political opinion unless it varies from them. The Greens leader, Richard Di Natale, went on yesterday on TV and said that if the Labor Party wants to win the next election, they need their votes, their preferences, which is true. The Labor Party can't win an election without the Greens' preferential votes. And if they want those preferences, their price for doing so, amongst other policies, is to create laws that would ban right-wing politics commentators commentating. So they actually named people. So Andrew Bolt, Paul Murray Live, who's a favourite of mine, Alan Jones, Peter Credlin, those sorts of people. They want it to be illegal to speak their mind. They want to make it so what their opinions are a crime, and they're not joking. They're not even jesting. That's a serious policy of theirs, and they call it hate speech. Now, what is hate speech according to the Greens? Anything that they disagree with. If you say something that they don't agree with, in their mind, it's hate speech, and they're prepared, a lot of them, to go to extraordinary lengths to, enforce that. So if you look at a group like Antifa, which is a far-left activist group, Google it if you don't know anything about it, they have no problem in Western society with being violent to put their point across. They have no problem with beating people in the streets. They have no problem with causing all sorts of social upheaval and things like that. And that happens in Australia. Andrew Bolt, I think last year or maybe the year before, was physically assaulted while going to a cafe in Melbourne. He said on air last night there are parts of Melbourne that he will not go to because he is legitimately frightened and with good cause of being physically assaulted by the left, people on the left. Now, this is what you get when you even for a moment entertain political parties like the Greens. It's why I've said repeatedly and will continue to say that they are the most damaging, toxic group in Australian politics. Now, It's also why I feel like it's incredibly important that we are educated as voters in a great range of things, including policies, but also on how to actually vote. If you go in to the polling booths on the 18th of May and do the simple, quick number one on the top of the line, you have no say where your preferences go. It is important that we vote below the line, especially in the Senate, and we can put Greens dead last. I will, now that we don't have to do all 178 candidates below the line in the Senate anymore. You can just do 1 to 12 to allocate your preferences. But I have done that before. I've spent half an hour at federal elections before on the Senate paper, and I've gone below the line and I've numbered them 1 through to 100 and whatever amount it was, because I wanted to put Greens dead last. I think it's just something we can't afford to ignore anymore. If you want to wake up one day in a society where you have no rights to free speech and you have no rights to have an opinion that is, considered unpleasant or, the left don't agree with, and you can be, punished by law for having that opinion, the way to get there is to ignore it now. If the Labor Party want to get into government, then, I think they need to start being able to do so without the Greens' preferences. And here's the truth. If you vote for Greens or you vote for Labor, you are voting for the other team. They are a coalition. They don't call it a coalition like the Liberals and the Nationals. They don't have a formal agreement like the Liberals and the Nationals. But at the end of the day, Labor and Greens are linked. They are bed buddies. There's no way that the Labor Party can win any election with a primary vote of less than 40%, which they do. They have to have the preferential votes from the Greens Party to get in. And that means they have to sell their soul to the Greens Party to get in. Now, what does that look like? That looks like Julia Gillard saying that under a government that I lead, there'll be no carbon tax, and then there being a carbon tax because the only way she could form government was to give in to the Greens' demands, and their demands were a carbon tax. That's what it looks like. It looks like any Labor government that gets in having to bow and scrape to their masters, which are the Greens Party. So yeah, I'm ranting, and I'm proud to do so. I think the Greens are dead set evil. I would almost go as far as to say it'd be okay if they were outlawed by law, but if you do that for them, then it's, you've got to outlaw a whole bunch of opinions, and then we're as bad as they are on the right. But yeah, we need to be informed. We need to, if you are an anti-Greens supporter like myself, and you obviously don't like the Greens, we've got to have the courage to go out into public and say the Greens and their policies and the politically correct nonsense that they spruik is wrong. You know what? It's not okay to say that having a different opinion to you is hate speech. It's just a different opinion to you. You can disagree with me if you like. And if you do, I'm not going to say you're hateful. I'm not going to say that because your opinion is different to mine, that somehow you're a hateful person. You just have a different opinion. Now, I honestly don't understand how anybody votes for the Greens, but about 9 to 11% of the population does, and I'm assuming they're not all evil. I'm assuming a lot of them are good people. But yeah, I just can't understand why they do, but they're not. I'm assuming they're not necessarily bad people. They're just misinformed, maybe. So there's my stance. It's a fairly long video today, but I really felt like it was important to point out that this movement of the left is dangerous, and if we don't stand up and stand our ground, one day we might wake up in Venezuela. It could happen. You don't think they just woke up one day and they were rioting in the streets. It was a long process, and it started with them not standing up at the beginning. So let's be a little bit more forthright and a little bit more proactive, if you want to use the correct vernacular, and let's stand up to the Greens and their nonsense today, from now. All right, guys, I'll should have a video for you again tomorrow.